Commissioners, all the concerned citizens here. When I asked to be on the agenda, and it was last week, and I asked to be on the agenda to speak to the County Commissioners specifically about a proposal to save New River. It was a proposal that offered some alternatives, but in any case, we're past the point where that is useful information, so we'll just move on from there. I decided to continue to keep my time on the agenda to do two things. I wanted to speak on, number one, what brought us here. And luckily, a lot of that has already been shared, so that shortens my time quite significantly, which is great. I don't intend on repeating. The second thing is, what are we going to do now? And those are the 2 points that I wish to hit on, and what are our options. I do believe that as Ms. Carter was ready to share, there were 18 days. 18 days, a lot of things have happened. 18 days we were made aware of the River's financial situation. 18 days decided to dissolve it. 18 days we got a replacement and a new plan that's going to save us all. There are 4 reasons that I chose to continue down this road and go ahead and make this presentation. Number one, which I think, and these are all things that are concerns of Alleghany citizens, and I've spoken with a lot of citizens in Alleghany County. We serve the other county. We serve 4 of the other 5 counties that was in the northern region that New River was in. We've talked with other county commissioners in other counties as well, but Alleghany is where our corporate headquarters is. Alleghany is where our heart is, and Alicia Lawson, the owner, grew up in Alleghany, as did myself. So this is where our heart is. This is where we focus. But the 4 things, for the reason for presenting and talking here today. Number one is for saving and or creating Alleghany County jobs in the mental health field. Any job, Commissioner Cox pointed out, just one single job is of utmost importance, especially in our critical time that we're in. The second thing is protecting the mental health services for the folks who need it most in Alleghany County residents. Because New River has been a pillar of this community for 45 years. And for 45 years it has served the folks in the community that nobody else could serve. And it has lifted up and propped up the least fortunate in our community. So it's important, of course, we continue down that road in some way or another, since New River's now gone from that. The third thing is minimizing the amount of taxpayer money that Alleghany has to pay because of decisions that we've made. I've talked to many citizens who have expressed lots and lots of concern about the amount of debt. There's been various numbers that have been out there, and obviously audits and stuff are going to bring this up a lot more. But because of the unique 168 relationship, some of the debts may, as we understand, be transferred onto the counties, and minimizing that would be of utmost importance. The fourth thing is protecting the non-mental health clients at Alleghany County from dramatic changes in the mental health dramatic changes in the mental health of the county. And I'll speak on that just briefly, and what I mean by that is not the effects just in the mental health system. In the mental health system, in the mental health world, we tend to be pretty isolated, and not a whole lot is known. You know, I would bet that most folks in this room before 18 days ago probably didn't even know what an LME was, or who Smoky Mountain Center was, or those kind of things. So it's a very complex process. But the mental health services that are provided in this county are designed to minimize the cost in the jails, to minimize the cost in the emergency rooms, and minimize the costs in other places that are much, much more expensive than community mental health services. So there is an interest of the taxpayer money and also to the citizens of Alleghany County with, that extends beyond the folks that are getting mental health assistance. So with those four things in mind, real briefly, I'll hit what brought us here. How did we get here? September 29th is when Smoky Mountain Center was notified that New River was having trouble paying its bills. The reality is everyone in mental health has had trouble paying their bills the past couple of years. That's nothing new. You can ask any provider across the state. We've had approximately 75% cut in the amount of enhanced services we're able to provide as a Medicaid provider over the past 3 years, since 2008, that is. And about a 30% cut in the amount of money that we get per service provided from Medicaid. So there's been a lot of cuts, and mental health has been a target of some of those cuts. So it's understandable with an agency like New River that a number of their clients are Medicaid clients, that they have some issues paying their bills. New River had more to its story than that, though. That's where, for most providers in the state, the troubles that are money ended. But New River had a couple of things. Reported in the Wilkes Patriot Journal on October 12th, an article titled "Formal Chairman Responds." And this was an article that centered on Zach Henderson, who's the former chairman of New River Board. He was responding to what was happening with New River at that time. Brought up 3 points that he felt were very important to the demise of New River and how it came about. The first one was New River's expansion in the central region, which it did a couple of years ago at the request of Smoky Mountain Center. Smoky Mountain Center approached New River Behavioral Health Care and said, we need services in these 3 counties in the central region. In general, or to sum up the discussions that happened after that, is CEO Pam Andrews went back to Smoky Mountain and said, we'd love to do that, but there's not enough money. Smoky Mountain turned around and said, but we'll get you the money. We'll support you. We'll give you what you need to expand. Come down to this region. And through lots of debates and debacles and those kind of things through the New River Service Authority Board, as those things go, the decision was made to expand in the central region. Very shortly after that expansion, and after New River expended millions of dollars in employees, in setup, in infrastructure, in buildings, in all the things necessary to expand services in the 3 counties, Smoky Mountain Center didn't live up to its financial obligations and cut the amount of funding that went to New River Behavioral Health Care. So they were struggling. Beyond that, in this year, earlier this year, 2010, those contracts were taken away from New River Behavioral Health Care without an RFP, without a request for services, and given over to another agency. Those were the state-funded services, and a lot of the money that was propping them up and allowing New River to continue to exist in a place where it was very difficult. So that happened over the past couple of years. And you can also see from the audits and things, I know you guys have reports on, that the past couple of years have been hard for New River. They had lost money both years. Second thing, that New River had a unique hurdle that the other agencies didn't have. The former CFO of New River, Larry Aggers, and I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly because I've never met him, but he was recommended to New River Behavioral Health Care to fill an open position by Smoky Mountain. The article in Wilkes Patriot Journal from the former chairman of the board for New River Service Authority says that it became apparent that the audit for 2009 and 10, which showed only a loss of $200,000, was not right. It appeared that we had lost substantially more than that. I'm sure that the commissioners have asked, and I'm sure the board has asked, isn't that the point of an audit? The whole point of an audit is to make sure it's right. And so when you review an audit, and go back and review an audit and say, whoa, it was substantially wrong, where'd the responsibility in that lie? Where'd it come in? The third thing, Zach Anderson himself said in this article in the paper, this is public knowledge, he was chairman of the board for 2 years and sat on the board for 7 years, that, quote, he believed that Silva-based Smoky Mountain Center helped the cause New River Behavioral Health Care's pending demise, unquote. That's a belief statement, but it was the belief of the chairman of the board. After these financial issues, something else happened. There was a fraud investigation. Early September 2011, this year, after it had been discovered that there were some financial issues, and New River had already approached the Smoky Mountain Center for additional funding, and to get funding up to a couple of days on a couple of different times to make sure they could make payroll. So Smoky was very aware they were having financial issues. Brian Ingram, CEO of Smoky Mountain Center, filed a complaint with the DMH alleging Medicaid fraud in early September 2011. This is when this was. Now, DMH did an investigation in September and found the allegations to be unsubstantiated. On September 22nd, later in the month, allegations were filed with DMA, Division of Medical Assistance. Now, the DMA rules are such a way that the person that brings the complaint is unidentified, or the agency that brings the complaint is unidentified. But the reports did say that it was credible, and that as a result of that audit and that investigation, that Medicaid funds were cut off from New River, which is widely accepted through article after article after article as the nail in the coffin for New River when those Medicaid funds were cut off. This could be, and all I'm doing is pointing out facts. I'm not making any allegations. I'm not pointing any fingers. I'm just pointing out how we got here and what happened. And it could very well be that all of these things added up to this point that caused New River to have its story of what happened are just circumstance. And a logical person could even look at it and maybe say it was all just circumstance. Had Lawson Support Services not had a very, very similar issue with very, very similar allegations just over a year ago, had we not had that as a reference point, it would have been much more difficult for us to draw the conclusions that we're drawing now. But in 2010, August 2010, Smoky Mountain Center made a move to withdraw the endorsement of Lawson Support Services to provide 3 services. Now, that's a long, complicated story, but to sum up, we spent several months without being able to bill Medicaid, which might sound familiar. The only reason we survived as an agency is because our owner, who is absolutely dedicated to Alleghany County and absolutely dedicated to the clients that we serve, mortgaged her house and everything else she had to make payroll so that we could survive. 3 months later, after Smoky Mountain Center had exhausted its appeal rights and appeal processes. The appeal decision came back to say that Smoky Mountain had completely erred, quote, erred in the withdrawal of endorsements, and ordered Smoky Mountain Center to repair and put back in place all the damages that they had caused Lawson Sport Services. Now, my question is here, just looking at this, if we'd have had 90 days instead of 18 to go through the appeal process, to let the audits go through, if we had 90 days to have been able to do that, what would we have found from the fraud investigation? We're going to find out. We're going to find out whether they were legitimate or not. Spoken to a number of New River employees who may be biased, but they all seem very confident it's not going to turn up anything. So let me catch up on my notes, I apologize. Yeah. Okay, so I simply asked the question, and it's just worth asking the question. Was this a plan? Is this the planned demise of an agency that served our counties for so many years, so long? Or was it just bad timing and bad circumstances? And that's up to you guys to decide and look at that. It could have very well just been the perfect storm of circumstances, and it might very well have been so. But moving on from what point as to where we are, because what happened as a result of that, as a result of New River not having the funding that it had had in years past as a reserve, and the fraud investigation which cut off the Medicaid funding and nailed the coffin shut, and the bad reports delivered by the CFO of the audits, which misrepresented the amount of money that they were in the law, in the hole from. It could have simply been the perfect storm, but where we are is New River closed, the Service Support Authority was dismantled, we created a new board. That board moved to dissolve New River by November 15th, opening the door for Smoky Mountain to do as they please with the services. You may ask, how would Smoky Mountain Center benefit? If this were a plan, how would Smoky Mountain Center benefit from destroying New River? Because on the surface, it doesn't seem like you want to get rid of your biggest provider in your in your service area. But there's a history around that too. A letter was delivered to each of the commissioners by a former county commissioner and former New River New River Service Authority Board member Millie Richardson before the dissolution of the board, which highlighted some of those points. You guys have already seen it, so I won't bring it up again, but the reference that she used specifically was coyotes circling a sick cat. The 160A structure of New River limited the power of Smoky Mountain Center and empowered the counties. You guys had more power than Smoky Mountain Center did in how New River provided services. It was you guys on the board that oversaw everything that New River did. And New River had to ultimately answer to your board as well as to Smoky Mountain Center. New River was the only multi-county 160A left in the county, in the state. And just existing provided a severe threat to Smoky Mountain Center's power. Quoted from the Winston-Salem Journal article on October 11th. This is a quote. The relationship between Smoky Mountain and New River had devolved enough by 2010 that the New River Authority began contemplating moving to a closer LME. Crossroads Behavioral Health Care in Elkin. If New River had joined Crossroads, it could have cost Smoky Mountain enough population in its market to keep it from qualifying for a Medicaid waiver program. The requirement is 500,000 residents in any LME market by 2013, unquote. Smoky Mountain Center is very proud that they have worked very, very hard to develop a waiver program and will be launching the waiver program live July 2012. Had New River chosen, and they had the right to choose as a 168, had they chosen to pull out of Smoky Mountain Center and put our counties under another LME's management, all of that work would have been gone, shot, and Smoky Mountain Center would have had to cease to exist or merge with another LME to continue going. Those talks were already in place. You can reference the New River Service Authority Board minutes, but those talks were in place before this came down. So, did Smoky Mountain Center target New River Behavioral Health to save itself from the embarrassment of having to withdraw from a waiver application? I don't know. As a provider of mental health services, and Lawson Support Services, I didn't introduce who we are. If you don't know, we provide mental health services. 5 counties, northwestern North Carolina, 1 county in Virginia. We're a small fish in a big ocean. We're about 1/10 the size of what New River was. And we operate only in the mountain communities here in northwestern North Carolina. I have no problem at all with Daymark. Not a problem at all. And we worked hand in hand with New River on many occasions. And we worked and got along very, very well. And please don't misunderstand that what I have a respect for any provider who can survive in this market, in this thing. So that's not my issue at all. But there are some connections that I think it's important to look at. That had none of the other things that I talked about so far happened, I think would be irrelevant. But in light of item A, item B, item C, item D, item E, we move down the line, I think you've got to pay attention to every connection. The current CEO of Smoky Mountain Center is Brian Ingram. And Mr. West referenced of his past relationship with Brian Ingram and mentioned he was going to speak to that, but I think we got distracted and didn't get to it, but I can take you through the high points. 2007, Brian Ingram was the CFO of Piedmont Behavioral Health Care Medicaid waiver test site. In 2007, he was released from duty and was immediately employed by Daymark Recovery Services. Stayed there about a year, roughly. The dates are iffy because there weren't press releases or anything on them, so to see. But then was contracted with Smoky Mountain Center to do a very specific task, orchestrating an ASO between the merger of LME. So that project failed; it didn't work. So that contract ended. So in 2008, Brian Ingram again became in the employment of Daymark Recovery Services. September 2009. He was hired as the CEO of Smoky Mountain Center. September 2010, oh, I'm sorry, I don't have the month. 2010, led the Smoky Mountain Center through the Medicaid waiver application process, which would give significantly more power to Smoky Mountain Center over Medicaid funds and make it operate like Piedmont Behavioral Health Care, which is the home of Daymark, where Daymark started. Daymark Recovery Services, which was twice the former employer of the CEO of Smoky Mountain Center, and once contracted with the CEO of Daymark Recovery, selected Daymark in a very exhaustive process that we've learned to be the agency to come and take the place of New River. Smoky Mountain Center stated, and we heard today from Ms. Carter, that they used criteria to eliminate providers from the pool, and to choose the best candidate from providers not eliminated. There are some notable criteria points in this, and it has been said and noted that standard protocols, standard operating procedures don't apply. We had to get this done in 18 days. There are no other options. Had to get it done in 18 days. We don't have time to investigate. What we've got time to do is create criteria so that we can narrow down the pool. One of those criteria, which is interesting, Smoky Mountain chose to lay the criteria down that no provider could apply or even be considered if they were not currently actively servicing 3 catchment areas under 3 LMEs. One would ask the question of why that has any relevance at all. Well, Lawson's had made a little noise, and we serve 2. So 3 seems like a good number to throw us off from the beginning, doesn't it? So Lawson Support Services, which is the only other mental health provider in Alleghany County. There's not another. And is the only other mental health provider in Ashe County. There's not another. And is a provider in Wilkes County, along with several others, and is a provider in Watauga County, along with several others. We have a larger footprint in the area that New River serves than anybody else across the state. A missing criteria that I would say that the commissioner should have absolutely demanded was on that list. But a missing criteria was, does the company have an existing, operating, functional, and profitable office in our county? You would think that would be a criteria that would be something you'd want to look at when you're looking at providing services in a county. But that criteria is not on the list. Another criteria that was mentioned was the speedy transfer of electronic medical records and the resources and the data systems to be able to back up and to be able to sweep in quickly and provide services. Well, that's a good criteria. I like that. You know, the question that was never asked, and I guess I can understand why, because of the three catchment area criteria we were never considered anyway. But Lawson Support Services uses the exact same medical record system as New River did. Transferring clients to us, transferring all client data to us, would take at most 15 minutes. At most. And I contacted the proprietor of that electronic medical record system and asked him about that process. He said, would this process be difficult? Would it be hard? Would it be easy? Tell me about this process. How would it work? He said very plainly, it's a very simple process. He said, where it's difficult is if you use a different electronic medical record system, because then you've got to create the tables and create the data, and you've got to go, and you end up having to go back and manually do a lot of stuff and all these kind of things, and you create a mess. But that question was never asked. That was another criteria that was ignored. You'll have to ask yourselves if there's a conflict of interest when Daymark Recovery was appointed as the Alleghany County mental health provider. Looking at the history, looking at the criteria, and you have to ask yourself, was there an agenda? Unfortunately, I rushed to judgment, and I rushed to get things done quickly, which was the loudest cry that could be heard for 18 days. Now, better do it now. Brian Ingram came and made an appeal to each of the boards. You must act quickly to dissolve the 160 Act. And all the boards listened and followed. So now, where do we go from here? That lands us where we are today. And we are here. One of the things that's also overlooked, and I think it's important to bring up here, all of the county commissioners of every county, not just Alleghany, received a proposal before the dissolution of New River from Lawson Support Services, and Smoky Mountain received this too, that offered to buy the one thing we didn't have, and that was time. We put a proposal on the table that was workable, that was doable, and that was feasible, that would buy 90 days. 90 days for the New River Board to be able to come together, to take their time in analyzing audit situations, to take their time in looking at the business model, and to determine whether New River could go forward there and function on. And in turn, if they'd have been able to do that, New River would be able to pay its own debts back. And it wouldn't be stuck on the taxpayers of Alleghany County. Now that proposal didn't get more than about one sentence talked about in here, because I was here to see it. And the closed session in Boone at the New River Board, I have to assume that it wasn't talked about at all. And the reason I have to assume that is because Brian Ingram was asked to come in and talk in closed session. Mr. Billy West was asked to come in and talk in closed session. A couple other people were asked to come in and talk in closed session, talk about their ideas about how to move forward. I waited in the lobby for 7 hours. I kept waiting for somebody to come and ask Lawson Support Services what about their proposal, and could it buy them the time to save New River? Nobody came to ask me, so I just had to. The question is, was the urgency created specifically with the intention that the details could not be examined? And that's a question you guys have to ask. So, all right, enough on dwelling on the past. Where do we go from here? I do have a question about, during this transition time, our county commissioners have decided you're forwarding the money to Smoky Mountain Center that in turn will be forwarded to New River New River Behavioral Health Care to fund their payrolls and to fund their obligations, and to do that through November 15th. Daymark is already assumed services, is already hiring, is already bringing people over. I have a question, and I just want to make sure it doesn't happen, but there's a possibility there for the counties to be paying for those employees for a couple of weeks while Daymark's also able to bill Medicaid and provide those services. So I just ask you to take a look and make sure that I'm not alleging anything there. I'm just saying there's a possibility it could happen, so just please watch out for it. I think the only thing that we can do now is do the thing that we were rushed to do, is to do the thing we were not able to do before, and that is take time. We need to take time to examine, to understand the consequences of the actions that brought us to here, and we need to take the time to understand and the consequences and the possibilities of potential actions there are from here forward. I make a proposal that the county commissioners of Alleghany County launch an investigation into this process. What I've been able to do here in 10, 15 minutes, or maybe more, I'm sorry, I didn't keep time, I apologize. But what I've been able to do here is hit some very high points to bring up some things to light. Whether the commission decides they'd like to shine more light on it, to determine if continuing down the road they're going to business with now is something they'd like to continue to do, that's up to the county commissioners. I'm proposing that some sort of investigation be launched, whether you hire an independent contractor to do it, independent private investigator, whether somebody's nominated from the board to thoroughly investigate from front to back. Because don't trust me, don't believe me. I'm just here reading from my little sheet of paper. But I think it's important that we know what brought us here. And so I'm asking the board to launch that investigation. I think in the interest of stopping on a high note, I'll take my leave of my time. I'll be happy to entertain any questions commissioners may have about the presentation.
Hearing none,
Well, I'd like to just say one thing. Mr. Atwood, some of the things you take bother me. Health scar. So, you know, I share a lot of your concerns, a lot of other concerns. A lot of things bother me about this.
I do hope the board takes it on themselves to launch an investigation. So the truth will be found out later. And that's the important thing. We shine a light on it, no harm.
Well, we would put the no in this situation. Thank you for your time.
before we move into item E, I'm going to declare a 5-minute recess, and I think Ms. Coster has a couple of things she needs to set up.